All right, here we are once again. So we're doing the reboot of the old 4Ever2Wheels podcast. You've been a guest on that before as well, Ryan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we go way back.
I don't know when that was, but doing a little bit of a reboot this time. You know, after being in the motorcycle industry for almost, I don't know, 2 decades now, I've kind of realized what I really like about motorcycles, which is riding them. That's the real fun part. And you and I have ridden, yeah, you and I have ridden some motorcycles all over the place. Although when I first met you, you didn't really ride that much. You spent so much time fabricating and building shit that it seemed like, and working, that it's
for sure.
Yeah, that you didn't really ride that much. And you had that crazy fucking gusset green bike that I when I first met you, you had just, it was still in raw metal, I believe.
Yep.
Was it running?
No, not at that point. It only ran after it was painted.
Okay. And that was probably what, 12 years ago? 2020?
Man.
2008?
Yeah. 07, 08, something like that.
08, yeah. And at that time, I had taken a few motorcycle trips, but I hadn't really put down a ton of miles. And I don't know what got me. I feel like I had just gotten caught up in the industry so much that I hadn't stopped riding motorcycles, but I just hadn't really gotten out and ridden.
Yeah. Well, you think about what the custom motorcycle industry is based on, and it's not necessarily adventure riding or the journeys. It's short spurts and showing off. At least that's kind of what I've experienced with it.
Sure. Or the journey is, building that bike, right?
Exactly.
It's the crazy shit that goes along with that. And the thing that you and I shared building, when I came to you and said, hey, I think what did I say? I want to change the paint and the tank on my bike.
Yeah.
Which I've got a picture of the original form of it that Jeff Cochran built. And then I was like, hey, what do you think you can do about this? And then we basically just spent, I don't know, 4 nights a week together for
a long time.
A really fucking long time, because it ended up like, let's change the geometry of let's change the tail section. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my problems is I can't do a surface job, changing an item or two. It's the same with my friend Greg's Buick. He was like, okay, we're gonna airbag it. And then, after an engine swap and airbags, and it's just,
that thing's so badass though.
Yeah, it's crazy, Life would be easier if you could just do a tank swap and a paint job.
But I think, you say that, but I think that there are some things that you've left like unmolested, right? Like you find motorcycles that you like as they sit. Sure. And you're like, oh, that's a cool bike, because you don't, per se, you don't really ride a custom bike. Your Arch is a custom bike, kind of.
Yeah,
really. It's a production bike.
The bikes that I'll purchase are, kind of tools or inspirational pieces for me. So like when I bought my Ducati 999S, that's one of the most beautiful bikes I've ever seen. It's up for debate for sure. Some people think it's the ugliest, but for me, I don't even have to ride that bike, but just owning it in its stock trim, I can walk around it whenever I need inspiration, and it just gets the wheels turning or the juices flowing, because it's super Italian design, really odd configuration of things, not conventional with side-by-side headlights or, whatever it may be. And, the purpose of owning that bike for me is strictly inspiration, Yeah. I have my 1098S that actually I was going to leave as stock as possible, but, working with the people that I do, they've given me some of the best race bike components that are available. And, you know, when they're gifted to you from other vendors that you work with and are highly regarded, you know, you kind
You're
of
going to put them on.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the nature of the customization with that. The arch is, you know, an arch. It's production custom. So, you know, this is exactly how we would build them for a customer.
Sure.
Definitely spec to my likes. And then my multi-strata, it's bone stock, and I'm going to keep it that way because, you know, the development money that Ducati has is more than any aftermarket could ever put into it. So the reliability of that bike is going to be at its peak in stock form, I feel. You know, other people may say otherwise, but, you know, I truly believe in factory engineers and why they do most things. Granted, some are garnered by regulations, but most of it is to create a reliable motorcycle that has a lot of power, a lot of safety built in, a lot of braking performance, handling performance, but also will go, you know, tens of thousands of miles before needing any major maintenance. So for the multi-strata, 150 whatever horsepower is all I need. I like having a quiet exhaust on it because if I ride 600-700 miles, I don't want my ears blown out. You know, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you start looking at kind of the piece of, and maybe we should let people know. So you are what's your official title at Arch?
The R&D manager. So I'm in charge of production prototype of all in-house manufactured components. Also responsible for electrical and new systems integration. You know, for instance, ABS, dash communications, any of the control systems that go on with the motorcycle.
Sure.
And I'm right there at the front of it with the development of new models. So not so much on the design side of it, but the architecture and industrialization side.
Awesome. That's super helpful. I think that people, it's a great, like your story, although you may, you know, from your view, it may not look like it, you know, of being a guy who is just building custom bikes after hours in his garage, right? In his, how many square feet was that?
It was a 3-car garage, so it was like 620. Not that I'm counting.
Yeah, out of your garage to, you know, being the R&D, you know, like the head, you know, guy at Arch to help develop. And it's a really interesting story, but I think it doesn't get where it's at without a lot of that in between. And I don't want to pick your ride that you're going to talk about, but I think, you know, one of the rides, at least for me, that, you know, other than riding to Sturgis, that ride that you and I took
that's the one.
Right after we built my bike, you know, so and I'll try to put some pictures up in between so people can see what that bike was, but it was called Bloodstained Speed Kills. And it was a conglomeration of ideas that I had over the years that I knew, like, I didn't really think were possible. And it just kept morphing into something else and into something else and into something else. I called in every favor that I had and a bunch that I didn't. And, you know, ended up with what I considered to be like one of the coolest custom bikes out there. You know, I still, like, every time I ride it, I'm like,
it's still fun to look at. And
dude, I love this bike.
I rode it,
you know,
that thing's peppy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's, It's not, from the drivetrain side, it's nothing fancy. But the reality of it is it was exactly what I wanted at that time.
Yeah.
And I can remember you being like, well, we should go for a ride when we're done with it. And I just thought to myself, like, what is he thinking? I'm like, because I just automatically thought like this thing's going to break, because I'd been around so many custom motorcycles at that point and so many builders on a bunch of different launches and rides and whatever, that I'm like, oh, this thing is going to be a fucking mess,
You
And
got to
so,
remember, I'm not like from the motorcycle industry. Like how I came up through it, it was just strictly, you know, the new kid that thought it was cool, so trying my own way, right?
yeah.
I didn't know that, you know, bikes can be cool if they only ride 20 miles a year.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I wanted that thing to hold together if we
Yeah.
hopped on it the day after we built it and went 1,000 miles,
Yeah.
and that's still my ethos behind building bikes. I want stuff to last. I want it to look cool and perform. But if you're spending $5,000 on a motorcycle or $100,000 on a motorcycle, the last thing you want to do is have to worry about what's going on between the rides, or God forbid on the ride. You just want to
Mm-hmm.
hop on that thing and know you got to change the oil every few thousand miles, and make sure your chain's tight and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And that's probably because that's how I ride. I'm not a maintenance freak. I'm not super anal about my tire pressures or my brake pad life. I'm just like, yeah, tires have air, chain looks good. Let's go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So we
building
built.
reliability in from the ground floor helps with that.
Oh, totally. Well, and we built that bike, my bike, and it got debuted at SEMA.
Yeah, the PPG booth, right?
Yeah. And Paul Cox did the seat. Kirk Taylor did the paint on it. And I just basically called in every favor that I had ever had. And so we got done with it. We got it fired up. After that, it wasn't running by the time we went to SEMA, I don't believe.
No, you had to have the seat shipped into SEMA. That
Yeah.
wasn't even on it.
Yeah. So, and then afterwards, so that's what time of year is SEMA?
November?
Is it?
I think it's late. Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't been for a long time.
And maybe, yeah, but we ended up taking a ride in, what was it, May?
Yeah,
It was
that's
like
usually when we do them.
yeah, as soon as the weather kind of turned somewhat, you and I kind of carved out like a long weekend basically, and I'm fairly sure it was your idea because I had never ridden that route before.
Yeah. I think I had gone down to Durango to get tattooed, maybe. And I just really enjoyed the drive. So, naturally, why not do it on a bike?
Sure. Yeah, so we pack up, and you're riding a brand new bike, right? You decide you're going to go and
So
what?
it had to be 2010, early 2010, because I bought 1125 CR on that Buell fire sale when Harley cut them.
Yeah. Yep, with the Rotax.
Yep, that was a fun bike.
Yeah.
I've owned lots of Buells.
Yeah, you have. You're a Buell fan.
Yeah.
So how did
Now
it
all I own is Ducatis, but they're the next best thing, I suppose.
Yeah. So how did it start out? I mean, do you remember? I mean, you and I can kind of go back and forth on that trip, but we started in Fort Collins.
Yeah, then we ran the back roads through Boulder and Golden, just staying off the freeways and kind of enjoying the ride. I remember you killed your bike in Boulder at a stoplight. And, you being the all-knowing motorcycle guy decided a kickstart bike was cool. So, I'm pulling
So
away from
dumb.
the light and you're standing there kicking it over. I'm like, dude, come on.
You're like, what are we doing? Yeah. And I just like
Yeah.
stalled it. I just like dumped the clutch or something.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
Yeah. And that sealed it for me. I'm never building a kickstart bike,
Yeah. What did, and
I hated my dirt bikes that were kickstart.
I'm sure I felt like a jackass too. Like I was just like, oh God. And so, but I think it kicked over. That's the one
It
thing
started
about that.
relatively quick, right?
Yeah, that's the one thing about that bike, knock on wood, is that it's always kicked over fairly easily for an 80-inch Evo.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. And then we went down, what is that? I've been away from Colorado for so long, I forget the roads, but what is that? Highway 85 out to Gunnison?
285.
285. So you go.
Is that right? Yeah.
I think so. So we went through Golden,
Uh-huh.
and that spits you out kind of I-70 ish, and then Red Rocks area, 285 out to Gunnison.
Yeah.
I thought we stopped and talked to somebody you knew out there.
Yeah. We did. We stopped at a tattoo shop. My buddy Donnie owned it. We stopped there like momentarily. I was like, hey man, what's up? We're just passing through. Later.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. And what's that stretch? 120 miles or something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And that's the first. This was the first real ride I had ever done. I'd ridden around the foothills or commuted.
You hadn't been to Sturgis yet?
No. Maybe Sturgis was the longest I had ever done because I rode the green bike to Sturgis.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting when you start doing longer trips. You start learning how important body position is and how to relax. Because if you start riding like you do when you're doing short, fast jaunts, you just exhaust yourself. You get too much shoulder tension, or you don't hold enough of your weight with your core, and it just starts eating you up. So I was definitely feeling that by the time we got to Gunnison. I'm like, oh man, what did I get myself into? We're a tenth of the way there, and I'm a little sore. But again, on a sport bike that I just bought.
Yeah. And I didn't really have, from what I remember, did you have a backpack?
Oh yeah.
You had a backpack and I had a backpack.
Yeah, that's all we had. You had the little bobber and I had the Street Fighter type bike, and
yeah,
no bags on those. No.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think we had really great rain gear either, from what I remember. I don't think.
I had no rain gear.
Yeah.
You probably had a trash bag or something.
Yeah, it was, I think, and now, that I look back on it, and I probably had ridden to Sturgis a couple of times at that point. But I think it was really like a down and dirty, like, I was like, we're going to be gone for a couple of days. It'll be fine. We're going to be sleeping in hotel rooms or whatever. We're not camping. So it'll be all right.
Yeah. And I think there's something about when you're in your home state, you get a false sense of, spatial distance. So you feel like, oh, if something goes wrong, somebody will come pick me up. Worst case, even though Durango's 450 miles away.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we'll just sit on the side of the road till a truck comes and gets us or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Which comes later in the story.
Yeah. Right.
So we're going along. We go through Gunnison, and what we get to, I think it's like Fruta or Grand Junction, somewhere in there.
No, we didn't go that way on the front side. We went Gunnison and then like south. So it had to be, let's see here. I think we get into Montrose and then head south to Ouray.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We went through Ouray.
Yep.
And it was a
highway, unreal.
The $1 million highway, and just dragging pegs. I was like, yeah, I'll see you later, dude. Cause I knew, I was like, you're on a Buell. right? And you're like, and now you probably think about it and you're like, God, I didn't even know how to ride at that point. Like,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
compared to what you've done now. But
Yeah, I'd
goddamn, it
hit
was
those
fun.
turns a lot harder
Yeah.
nowadays for sure. But
But
I want to do that again. I think everybody should ride that road. I mean, the drastic cliffs and the no guardrails and the 2-lane roads, but then the perfectly cambered turns that are maintained and
mhm,
the asphalt's good, and
for sure.
you can pull over anywhere and have some of your favorite motorcycle pictures ever, right?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And that's the road between Silverton and Durango. And I
Yeah.
think at that point it had already gotten dark, right? I mean, by the time we rolled
It
into
was starting to,
Durango,
yeah, it was dark in Durango.
and so we had probably ridden for 12 hours that day,
Yeah, that sounds right.
right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we had more fuel stops, right? Your gas tank is
Yeah.
2 gallons or 2.5 gallons or something. I don't
Yeah.
even know.
Yeah, it's like 2
Um,
gallons.
so more fuel stops and just trying to figure it out, which is cool. I mean, that's another thing when you start doing real road trips. Um, you figure out what your comfort level is between your stops too, right?
Mhm.
Like I can do 320 on my multistrada because it's got 8 gallons.
Sure.
Um, but realistically, I start to fatigue at 220-mile stretches. So
Sure.
instead of trying to go full length, I just get off and stretch my legs.
Yeah.
Makes you want to get back in the saddle versus being a little angsty towards it when you ride back out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that at least for me, I've figured out that there's times where I'm fine with taking a like relaxed pace. And usually
Yeah,
it's when I'm with other people, right? Like usually
yeah,
when I'm with, and I don't really ride with other people. I ride with you and maybe like one other person. That's it.
yeah,
But if I'm riding with other people, like I'm fine with like, yeah, let's stop and get a bagel, or like, cool, let's do, let's take this detour and check this out or whatever. Like I've heard that this road is really cool but when I'm by myself, god damn, I'm just like eye on the prize, like
yeah,
drain in the tank, like
yeah, for sure.
just, let's get there,
Hmm.
so it's an interesting, I don't know what that is, but it's an interesting juxtaposition, between
Yeah,
riding with other people and riding by yourself.
I'm
Uh,
there with you 100%.
what's what happened the next day? The next morning, I vaguely remember.
So we got to Durango, stayed in like a Holiday Inn or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're usually the route master, like, choosing what way we go. And for some reason, we decided to go the long way and do a loop through Dolores.
Mm-hmm.
So we went Durango to Dolores to Telluride.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think, I've ridden a lot of places and a lot of miles. But I still think that Durango to Telluride via Dolores loop, ooh,
It's ridiculous.
you'd be hard pressed to find a better road. I mean, you got the rolling hills, again, the perfect 2-lane blacktop. And there's just cool little like dilapidated cabins off to the side next to the river with the rock faces.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just you could ride those roads for a long time and not get tired of them.
Yeah. And at that point, no mechanical failures, but I do remember something happening in Dolores, maybe with my bike.
Yeah, so there's that one stretch in Dolores of like heat separated asphalt.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was just like a jarring doof, 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 doof in the
Uh-huh.
road. And since your bikes are rigid with, 2 inches of front travel, you blew out your headlight. I know that.
Okay.
Um, I don't, I know you definitely blew out your headlight, and then you were complaining about the jetting in your car because, you know,
We were at
built it in.
altitude. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah, I think it was
there's,
acting like there was something funky, but then it just kind of worked its way out. I vaguely remember like stopping in Dolores, getting gas, and then us just kind of putting the hammer down and trying to head to our next destination, which was, did we have a destination that day? Do we know where we were
yeah,
going?
yeah. You had a hotel in Glenwood.
Okay.
You had a hotel at like the Springs or something, and we were like, yeah, all right, we're gonna go and like just chill and relax after pounding these miles. And
Because it was going to be a fairly short day from what I remember. Like it was supposed to be,
yeah,
you know,
roll in at like
like
3 or something.
yeah. Because we started pretty early in the morning, from what I remember,
Yeah,
and, and then we went from Dolores to
Telluride. I think we had like lunch in
Telluride.
Telluride,
Mm-hmm.
or the little town outskirting Telluride, because you kind of have to take a right and go in to a dead
Yeah.
end to do Telluride, right? But again, that's super bitching because you're riding over the hill down into a valley that's just green with pines, and you see the little mining town outcropping, and yeah, it's just spectacular to roll into those little towns, and everybody's always so nice. They want to take a picture of your motorcycle or ask where you're coming from, or
Yeah.
people are generally excited to see you,
Yeah.
which is kind of an interesting thing when you ride into more remote areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool.
It is. I agree.
They give you a little extra cushion when you're in at the restaurant and you got to throw your bags and your jacket and your helmets down there. They don't care that you're taking up a 4 or 6 seat table for 2 people.
Yeah.
You go do that downtown and they're like, what are you doing, man? I need my tips.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's part two of the idea that people like the idea of people traveling,
Yeah,
right?
adventuring,
Like
right?
there's something like very inspirational about it, because some of those people that you meet may have never left their town, right? And the
Yeah,
idea that you're riding on, and myself, riding on a motorcycle that you built, not me, you, um, but that like somebody built and you're a long way from home is like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty inspirational. It doesn't it doesn't happen that often. And I think after, being around it for a while, at least I've taken it for, I've taken it for granted, where I'm like, oh, this is just what we do, like
yeah,
it's not that big a deal. And then you realize like, oh, most of the country has never ridden a motorcycle 400 miles in a day,
yeah, yeah. And
like,
it'd be interesting to know what the numbers are of motorcycle owners who don't even ride 1,000 miles in a year.
oh yeah.
I
Hmm.
know there's a large portion of that.
I'm trying to avoid being that guy this year, but it might happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I've done over 6,000 on the multistrada already,
Nice. That's
which is
great,
pretty
man.
sweet.
Yeah.
Did 250 on the arch yesterday. It was nice.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
So we go outside of Durango. We're
Yeah. So
heading
lunch in
north.
Telluride, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then we out of Telluride, we go towards Olathe.
Uh-huh.
I remember that because Olathe's got the best corn anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So riding
Mm-hmm.
in, I was like, oh, yep, there's a lot of corn here.
Yeah.
Um, but unfortunately, we had to take an early gas stop, I think, in Olathe because my bike stopped charging for some odd reason. So how did that work?
I
The
can't
bike
remember.
the
Yeah.
bike died or something, and we pulled into Olathe, the town, and went to like an auto zone or something and bought a charger, like a plug-in wall charger.
Mm-hmm.
So then I don't remember where we camped out that first time. Maybe it was outside of the auto parts store, but a lot of those buildings have outdoor outlets, right?
Sure.
So we plugged that in. I pulled the tail section off the Buell, and we sat there for 45 minutes while it charged. And in that time, we're scouring the area for Harley dealers, trying to see, what the length of time would be to replace the stator in the Buell. Like if they had parts in stock and it was a one-day job, could we get it knocked out? Because come to find out, those 1125s had charging system issues where the stators would melt down. But obviously nobody wanted to touch the Buells since Harley just axed them. So the next best thing was, we found a Harley dealer and bought a replacement battery. I think
was my idea.
It totally was. Yeah. I was like, man, we're kind of screwed. I don't want to stop and charge, for an hour every 30 miles. This is crazy, or 45 miles or whatever. And you're like, well, what if you bought another battery? I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Then we could piggyback them, right? We could stop for an hour and a half, charge both batteries, throw one in my backpack. And then, if we're in the middle of nowhere between towns, the bike dies, just swap the battery out, which on the Buell, you got to take the tail fairing off, and it's not that fun of a job, but you get proficient at it.
You did get very proficient at it.
Yeah. So, from Olathe or Montrose the second time, the remaining route, I had no charging system on my Buell, and
you unhooked all your electrical.
Yeah, undid the headlights and everything I could so that the electrical drain was as light as possible. Run the fuel injectors and the ECM, the bare minimum stuff.
Sure.
No brake lights, no turn signals. Left the dash on because you go into the volt screen and you can watch the state of your battery, right? So it goes from fully charged 12.8 volts, and you can watch it. And as soon as you hit 9.2 volts, the bike just shuts off. Hash starts flickering, and the fuel injection can't do anything with that light of voltage. So then you kick it into neutral and coast as long as you can until there's a good pullout. Luckily, it seemed like for the duration of the trip, the rest of that was mostly downhill where that would happen.
Yeah.
So kind of luck of the pattern there. But yeah, we would pull into gas stations, buy a drink, and then go sit by the dumpster for an hour and a half while we charged two batteries. And again, I mean, luckily people were cool, right? They didn't hustle us out of their area because we were just bumming by their doors or whatever.
Not at all.
Yeah, just see what you can do.
We lived on a diet of beef jerky and Red Bull, or Monster for you.
Lived. That's how I've been eating ever since.
But what I think a lot of people don't realize is the Western Slope, which is where the bike first started to kind of crap out, is like a really agricultural place. It's really well known for peaches and apples, and so we're basically riding through all these orchards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that back way into Glenwood is ridiculous. Like it's so, and we went over Red Mountain Pass. Is that the name of that pass?
I'm not sure what the pass is. I know we ended up in Redstone, right next to Marble. Yeah, I'm not sure what that pass is called. It was cool.
Yeah. So night starts to come, right?
Man,
this is so fucked up.
We're sitting at that hotel.
Yeah, it was wasn't it an abandoned hotel? Yeah, I feel like it was abandoned, but there was electricity there, right?
Yeah, no cars, no nothing, and we're like, oh my god.
So we smoke a cigar. Yeah.
Yep. charge up both batteries, and dusk is falling on us. And your headlight is blown out again because of the vibration. So you have no headlight. I have no headlight because I got to save voltage, right?
Sure.
And for some reason, you have a mining headlight in your bag.
It's a camping headlight. Jesus Christ. It's called a headlight.
You were going spelunking. And so you put that on your helmet, and that was our light as dusk descended, and we roll out. I don't remember what that town was called, but we go up the hill, past like a little makeshift concrete plant off to the right with those looming incandescent lights where you know you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Totally.
And we go up this tight pass, and we're like, oh my God, this is how we die.
Totally.
This is the bad decision of where somebody comes around a corner and doesn't see us and plows us off the road, or we don't have headlights, we can't see the turns, and we plow off the side. But luckily, again, Colorado air is so crisp and open and clean, and I think it was a full moon.
I feel like it was too.
So we had the really great lunar light illuminating off of the cliffside walls, the mountain walls as we go through the pass. And we got, I don't know, 60 miles up the road.
Yeah.
And we had already changed both my batteries, and, we pulled over in the middle of the night. It was probably 9:30 or something, right? Because it was pitch black. And a Cadillac came driving up oncoming while I'm kind of tinkering with my bike, seeing if there's any way that we can do anything to keep going. And she circles back, and she's like, "Are you guys okay?" It was an older lady. She was probably late 50s, maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
And she's like, "Are you guys okay?" And we're like, not really. My bike died. She's like, "Let me give you a ride somewhere." And so I pushed my Buell into the trees, and you pulled out behind her on your bike with no headlight, and I'm just riding in her passenger seat. And she drove us into Redstone, into just into the town, and we hopped out of her car and said thank you, because there's a couple hotels in there. And we said thank you, and she was super happy to help, really nice lady. We went into that first hotel, and they're like, "Yeah, you can't stay here. There's no rooms."
Yeah.
So we walk further into Redstone, and there's a place called the Redstone Inn, I think. And what was the guy's name? Mike? I think his name was Mike or Mitch or something.
Mitch,
yeah,
you're right. Yep.
Super nice guy. And he's like, "Oh, you guys are riding, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, kind of." He's like, "What kind of bikes you got?" And he's, we're like, "Well, one of them's here. The other one's off in the trees because the charging system died." He's like, "What? Screw that. Let's go."
Yeah, because we were just planning on spending the night there and then figuring it out the next day. I mean, that was the goal at that point. It was like, okay, we just got to get to the next town. We can't go back because I think it was 100 plus miles, from where we had stopped to go back to Grand Junction. So it was like we got to move forward, and so we were like, all right, well, we got to sleep somewhere. We're not going to sleep on the side of the road. We might as well try to find something. And so that was the impetus for that. And then we get in the pickup truck with this dude, right? He's like, "Oh, I got ramps. I got let's go get your bike." He was stoked. He was like,
and we were like, okay.
Super. Yeah. He was super excited about the whole thing. And we start talking to him, and I realized that he went to MMI with my friend Scott, and we had actually been in a gentleman's club together in Daytona 2 years before that. and had no
Small world.
idea. Yeah, exactly. It was like, and after that, it was on. He was like, "Oh man, this is great." Like
Yeah.
we went, and got
Yeah, it
your
was
bike loaded up.
perfect. Rolled it up, put it in the bed of his truck, brought it back. He opened up his garage and let me charge the batteries overnight. And he had this Ron Finch frame that he was working on in there.
That's
He was
right.
building the Ron Finch bike. And it was best case scenario.
It was
You know?
so bizarre. It was like,
And
people talk about coincidences or whatever, but it was like one of those things where you're just like, is there something else working here? Because I thought we were going to die on that pass.
yeah,
And I'm like, I can be a little dramatic at times. I realize that, but I was literally like, an elk is going to run out in front of us. We're never going to see it, right? It's not going to see us, and we're just going to plow right into it or whatever. And I'm like singing as loud as I can in my helmet, like, just like,
yeah. You had your spelunking light on strobe, and no, yeah,
it was bizarre.
It was definitely one of the handful of times where I thought, wow, this can really go the wrong way.
For sure. Yep.
But best case scenario, and that's one of the things about like getting out and adventuring, whether it's road tripping, whether it's like hiking and camping, dirt biking, motorcycling, whatever, that's what makes it memorable is the adverse conditions and the problem solving you have to do along the way. You kind of pull yourself up and you can accomplish things that if you thought about the situations before, you could talk yourself out of
totally,
doing the trip. But that's what makes the trips the most memorable is those adverse conditions and figuring it out and making new acquaintances or whatever it may be. And yeah, that's what keeps me going back for sure.
Yeah. Well, and we woke up the next morning and we realized we were behind the 8 ball already, right? In terms of mileage. Like we had, because we were going to go to, your dad had a place in Winter Park, Fraser.
Granby,
that's right.
Yep.
And we're like, we're probably 50 miles to Grand Junction or to Glenwood at that point.
Yep. Because we hopped on the bikes, went to Glenwood and recharged again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to go down 70 so that we could start going the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Went down 70 to Edwards and stopped and charged at a gas station there. And we're like, man, how are we going to get to Granby tonight? Because, you would normally have to go 70 to
40.
Yeah. What is that? Georgetown, Empire, and then up and over.
Yeah.
And it's too long of a stretch for my mileage, my range.
Yep.
That we couldn't have done that. So you're looking at the map while we're recharging. You're like, hey, I found a great road. It goes right here. We cross right across the freeway right here, highway, interstate, Colorado.
Yeah.
And it shoots us out right in Kremling. Great. I'm like, oh, cool. That's 40 miles. That's right at my battery range. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we get going and we're what? 10 miles, 15 miles down that road, and
it
just shifts to dirt and loose gravel.
Just
you're on your rigid and I'm on a sport bike. And we're like,
and it's like washboard, just shit, not great,
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of me getting us lost or on shitty roads. Every time you go out, and I don't know why you are always like, oh, you picked the route. Because every time we go out, I fuck up somewhere, go left, and we should go right and end up on a dirt road somewhere.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin your reputation. Your track record. It's got to stay intact. So,
that's right.
Yeah, so I have to maintain 60, 65 miles an hour to get the right range out of my bike to where we can get to Kremling. So I'm like, Ken, take your time, do your thing, but I got to go or else we're pushing this bike in, right?
Yeah.
So I pop it up to 60, 65 on this washboard gravel road, and I just blast out of there.
And I just keep thinking I'm going to come around a corner and you're going to be fucking on the side of the road, like bike in flames from going, because you just like took off. And I'm like going 20 if I'm lucky, because it's just like, you're just like shaking. I've got, little to no suspension in front and no suspension in back.
Yeah.
Which I found out later, that 38 millimeter front end is fucking garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The new one's a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I took off down that road and you again figure out your body position and you get that bike to just float around under you. And, if you're too rigid, it gets sketchy and it starts bouncing that weight around wrong. But you sit above it and you let it float. You can maintain that just fine. Yeah. I mean, some of the turns are a little dicey trying to slow that thing down. But I rolled into the first gas station at Kremling coasting again because my bike shut off, but I didn't have to push it. And by the time you got there, I had the battery half charged.
Totally.
And then we just
I remember it was that fancy new gas station in Kremling. Yeah. Like it had just been built, I feel like.
Yeah, what was it, like a pilot or something?
Yeah, something
pilot
like that.
Station
and at that point we were like, we could kind of, smell the fact that we were like really close, right? Like we were like, oh, we're pretty close.
Yeah, we weren't quite in the wilderness anymore.
Yeah. We were on Highway 40. Kremling's not that far. There's a few towns in between. It seemed like we were kind of, home free at that point.
Yeah. Then just hopped on and finished up to Granby, and it was nice because it was, a good house. So relaxing and spread out a little bit. And so it was a nice landing spot after a questionable couple days.
Yeah. I don't even remember. Where did we eat that night?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I have no idea. It's a blur.
Which is strange because usually we usually try to pick pretty great places to eat.
Yeah. Everywhere I travel is based on food. So. I thought about it and I have no idea where we ate.
Yeah. It could have been that shitty little like hot dog taco stand place.
Right.
It could have easily been that because I know you and I both, that's like kind of next to Arby's or whatever there in Fraser.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have easily been that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It was a nice night to take a hot shower and go to sleep. But
yeah, it was.
And then the next day we rode from where my dad's house was in Granby into Grand Lake. Again, every one of these stops is 40 to 60 miles in separation, right?
Yeah.
So Grand Lake, we stopped and we played like shuffleboard or something in a cool lodge.
That's while
we charged my batteries.
That's right.
And I don't know if we did it. Like, did we charge the batteries in the
inside
lounge or something?
I feel like we did because we couldn't find an outside plug.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it was like a lodge or something, and we were like, oh shit, we don't, like our bike's broke. We got to charge it. And they were like, well, whatever,
Yeah, do your thing. Okay.
Yep.
So then did that, played some shuffleboard, charged up the batteries, and then went over Rocky Mountain National Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that pass called? The one into
Trail Ridge Road.
Yeah, Trail Ridge Road, right? Yeah, and that worked because up to the peak of Trail Ridge was, I don't know, 30 miles or something.
Mm-hmm.
Got up to the top where it was cold because it was still early in the year. Cold. Yeah. There was some snow on the sides of the road, and shut the bike off and coasted the whole way down Trail Ridge into Estes.
Which, if anybody has been on Trail Ridge Road, it is super sketch. There's no guardrails, and it is thousands of feet down.
Yeah.
So not having the force of your engine going.
Engine braking, right.
Yeah, and everything that goes along with that. no
Yeah.
thanks. I was like, oh, this could end real bad, you know?
But it extended my range, right? So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, and
That's
then the
funny.
rest of the way, we stopped in Estes, had a cool lunch,
Yeah.
and then rode back to Fort Collins, Loveland. You
Yeah.
know, um,
A lot packed into 3 days.
yeah, it
That's
was a
only 3 days.
thousand miles, and um, man, how many times? I bet I could do the math and figure out how many times I had to swap the battery, but it had to be a dozen.
Yeah.
A dozen battery swaps, and your bike was perfect. Just
Flawless.
blew out the headlight a couple times. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's what that's what riding's all about for me. Is the adventure and some of the adverse conditions.
Well, and it's so, like, it's so satisfying, I think, when you look back on it, right? Like, because you can't really do anything except be in that moment, right? And
Yeah,
I think that's where, at least for me, that's where I get those. And I think you probably even had that to some extent yesterday, when you went and rode,
yeah,
is you get to have that moment where it's like, it's just you and the bike and the road, and you're really not thinking about anything, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And that exact methodology is what I enjoy about track riding too.
mm,
Taking a bike to the racetrack is, you have to clear your head or you're gonna miss a breaking point or you're gonna miss your apex and you're not gonna enjoy yourself. So you clear your head, and it's a weird sort of forced meditation, right?
yeah.
Um,
It's
and you get
crazy how
to,
tired you are afterwards as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
You have a big letdown after
mhm,
any type of motorcycle ride, whether it's doing 50 laps at a track
mhm.
or riding 1,100 miles from Colorado to California. Your body picks up those vibrations and your muscle memory. You're doing everything on the bike subconscious,
Mhm.
and then when you get off, it's like sensory deprivation. You're
Yeah.
just sitting there and you can feel the revolutions, the cycles just working their way out of you. It's a really strange thing.
Yeah.
And the further you push yourself in any of those riding situations, the more you have that experience, and it's really it's really something. I
Yeah.
think that's what makes it addicting for me. I mean, people will say, why would you want to ride for 18 hours?
Mm.
Or, why do you want to ride around in circles on a racetrack? And it's
Why
exactly
wouldn't you?
that. Yeah, it's
I mean,
exactly
that
that.
doesn't
It's the
make any sense to me.
adrenaline, it's the stories, it's the weird connection that you have with that motorcycle. They become a more intimate relationship with those bikes, which is strange to say, but I like road tripping everywhere I go. So driving a car is really something I enjoy. Taking in the scenery and then doing it on a motorcycle is a condensed version of that. It's that times 10.
Exactly. Yeah, I think about that, like, when I'm in a place where, I'm in a car and I'm
Mm.
like, "Oh, this would be so much better on a motorcycle." Like,
Yeah,
it's my immediate reaction, and
yeah,
it's kind of weird. So, for any people that are listening or that haven't gone on an epic ride, do it. Like, even if it's by yourself, like,
yeah,
it's so worth it, because you're going to get something out of it that you never expected.
yeah.
Um, and that's what I've found. And I don't know, I just really appreciate our friendship, Ryan. You and I have known each other for a long time now. I've probably ridden, you know, more distance with you than anybody else, in terms of, I just
Yeah,
don't
for
particularly
sure.
like riding that much with other people. And like, I know what you're going to do. I know how, like, I feel like we've ridden so many miles together that it's like really clear.
Sure.
Um, And, I also know you had a lot of choices of cool rides that you could have picked. And I think it's cool that you picked one that you and I did together. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've ridden bikes in places that people would definitely put on their bucket list, right?
sure.
Very special machines and in different parts of the world. And um, just part of what's fun about a good adventure, a good motorcycle, is having a good friend to do it with, and having something go wrong. If it was perfect, like if you and I did that trip and we hit every one of our towns on time, perfect fuel load, no mechanical issues, it wouldn't be as memorable,
Yeah.
but like working together and figuring out how to limp back without making that AAA phone call or call in one of our friends to come get us. Yeah, that'll keep that one in the memory banks forever.
Yeah. It's weird how those little pieces, like I think overcoming adversity, I think people thinking that there's something wrong with adversity, right?
Yeah,
Like when something goes wrong, that's wrong or that's bad, right?
yeah,
And I think that trip really taught me that it's kind of a part of the deal, and it's okay. And the thing that was cool about, the universe or whatever, the 15 things that you could call it, is that it wasn't happening to me, you know? And to watch you kind of just go, yeah, like,
yeah,
yeah, we'll figure it out. It was like really, it changed something in my head of like, oh, you just kind of figure things out, and I
yeah,
don't know that I had people like you, I'm not particularly mechanical. I'm not like I'm definitely not, you know, I don't have an engineering brain. And so for me, a lot of the times when those things would come up, I'd just be like, fuck, now what do we do? Like, shit, like Jesus, like
yeah,
shit. And when you're riding a motorcycle, that's just not, it's not productive, and
yeah.
I've taken that into a lot of other places in my life that I feel like it's been really helpful, especially with like even parenting, like kid
Sure.
comes up against a problem, it's really easy to just go, oh yeah, you're fucked,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
or you just go, you know,
Yeah,
there's probably a
strip
way
it,
through this.
strip it down, and start chipping away at the problem. And
Yeah.
you know, if you throw in the towel, you're not even giving yourself a chance.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. Awesome,
it's
man. Well,
definitely.
I really appreciate you coming on and being the guinea pig for this. I think it was an awesome conversation for me. So
Yeah, yeah. I don't know
wanted
if
to
anybody
relive that.
else is going to find it interesting, but to relive some of those trips and um, you know, just it takes you right back. It's such a vivid memory for me that I'll be anxious to see what your other specimens have to say. I don't know what you call people that come on
Do you think
these
there's sperm
shows.
donors? Like, what is happening,
Patients.
Ryan? Patients? What? Listeners?
I, I I don't know. No, but like if you interview somebody, what do you call that person?
Oh,
What am I?
an interviewee, a guest.
Oh, guest. A
You're a
guest. Yeah.
guest,
Okay.
a
What your other guests
specimen.
might have to say. I'm
You're
not real good at
ridiculous.
the social stuff, so.
Oh, you're funny.
But it'll be interesting to see what their experiences are and what their trips are. You know, I have one more great trip that I'm really looking forward to, and then everything else in between is just part of being a motorcyclist, I guess. But
Sure. You mean, are you talking
the
about your
Alaska
40th
trip is
birthday? Yeah,
the
your 40th
bookend.
birthday to Alaska that we're doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yep.
happening.
That's the next big one. So maybe you'll find a guest that's done something like that
Yeah.
and get some pointers.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day, and
Yeah, man.
I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. All right,
See ya.
bud. See ya.
Thanks.